Am I the a-hole for bringing my sister-in-law's wallet to the restaurant when she conveniently always forgets it? My female 28, sister-in-law Amy, female 26, always comes to visit from out of town. She stays with us instead of a hotel and always wants to go to expensive restaurants. She always conveniently forgets her wallet or domes up with some excuses as to why she can't pay her share. She has implied that since I make much more money than her, I should be the one to pay. No, not my husband should pay, but me specifically. I do make a fair amount of money, but not so much that I can treat someone every time they come into town. Nonetheless, in the past, I have just paid a bill and asked her to pay me back. She never has. She had made a reservation at an extremely expensive restaurant last night, and before we left, I made it clear that I wouldn't be paying her bill. This is where I might be the a-hole, and I'll admit I got this move straight from an episode of 2.5 Men. As we were leaving, her and my husband went to the car. I pretended I forgot something and went back inside. I found her wallet sitting right on top of her suitcase. I put it in my purse and we went to the restaurant. When we were done eating, I asked for separate bills. She said no. We only need one bill because she forgot her wallet again. I reached in my purse and said, "This wallet?" She was extremely furious. She said that I should not have touched or grabbed her wallet. So am I the a-hole for taking her wallet and bringing it to the restaurant? Now for the top comments before reading the little update. Not the a-hole, but you totally should have flipped the script. Left your wallet at home. Only brought your license, so she had to cover the whole bill. Then never take her out to a restaurant again. Wish I thought of that. Personally, I like the way you did it better. I wish I could have seen her face when she saw the wallet. She made a reservation and invited you. Etiquette says she should be responsible for 100% of that bill, not the a-hole. It's the same principle with dates. The person who asks and chooses the restaurant, ideally with the other person in mind, then pays the bill, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Awesome power move. But when is your husband gonna step up and make her pay her share? They've bullied and manipulated him like this his whole life. He's gotten so used to it that he doesn't see the bigger issue. Old habits die hard. I'm trying to help him stand up for himself, but it's an uphill battle. Fish don't realize they're wet until they got onto land. You need to pluck your hubby from that toxic pond. Opie, you need to mosey over to r/justknowmother-in-law and to a therapist website. I have several cringe mother-in-law stories that I've wanted to post to that sub. I just might do it. Little update. Amy just called me. She saw this post and she yelled at me for bad-mouthing her on the internet. Honestly, I don't care. Amy, hopefully reading all these comments is a wake-up call for you. Next story. Am I the a-hole for kicking my brother out over a joke? I, 25 male, and my girlfriend Ava, 25 female, have been dating for 2 years now, and we recently moved in together. Due to the pandemic starting around the time we began dating, she'd never met my older brother Jared, 36 male, till now. For context, Ava was involved in a pretty bad car crash when she was 16. While stopped at a red light, she was rear-ended by a drunk driver. I've seen the pictures and they're pretty bad, so I'll spare the details. Ava made it out alive with a fractured hip, broken nose, concussion, and some pretty sizable scars. Because of the accident, Ava still goes to physical therapy for her hip and has a bad memory. If it's not written down, it goes in one ear and out the other. Her words, not mine. Yesterday morning, Ava left pretty early for her appointment. She has forgotten her notebook at home, which has all her important info and lists for the day. So when she got home, she was shocked to see Jared in the apartment. It took a minute or so to remind her what was going on. When she remembered, she smiled and went to introduce herself to Jared. Jared laughed at her and said, "I didn't know you were dating the fish from Nemo. At least she's not a fatty." Ava was reasonably shocked by this and tried to continue on with introducing herself. Jared said he didn't need to know her name because he was going to call her Dory. He then made a joke about Ava's scar. She was wearing a tank top, so you can see the scar going from her right shoulder down her arm. The second Jared said that, I got super angry and kicked him out, telling him he wasn't welcome in our house and not to contact me. All day my parents have been calling and telling me I'm overreacting and should apologize and talk to Jared again. Ava is thankful I kicked him out, and our friends agree I did the right thing. I feel bad now, like maybe my reaction was a little out of line and over the top. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I'm not sure why this needs to be said, but defending your girlfriend from ableism is always the right play. until or unless Jared apologizes genuinely, as in actually understands he was wrong and why. I'd go further and just stop associating with him altogether. Honestly, you would be the a-hole if you just let this slide and acted like nothing happened. Also, who starts saying all this bullying stuff to someone they just met? Oh right, jackass. Not a-hole. Your brother is a huge a-hole. And some other really choice words that would get me in trouble here. I'd go no contact with him over this. There was absolutely no excuse for his bad behavior. And tell your parents that they raised a bad seed, and if they keep defending him, go no contact with them as well. What kind of people enable such atrocious behavior? Defend a horrible behavior and a person perpetuating said bad behavior. Do apples not fall far from the tree, or is he the golden child? He's the God-given golden child who can do no wrong. That explains a lot. Hope his child doesn't take after him. By the way, OP, you should have named him Richard in the post. You know, because he acts like one. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my in-laws they have to call before visiting? Recently, my wife 29 female and I 32 male bought a house. I told her family that they are welcome if they want to visit. They just have to ask first. And because we have a newborn baby, I also told them that for now we will be hosting only short visits from the baby's grandparents, with no more than 3 people at the same time. I've never been a social person. I've never visited anyone before asking or being invited, and nobody has ever visited me without asking first. Not even my parents. I thought that was a common rule of basic education, but who knows? That's why I'm asking if I'm the a-hole. As soon as the baby was born, they started coming without asking, staying from morning till evening and regularly making a mess in our kitchen. I told them that we don't need help. I work from home and my wife is on maternity leave, but they are welcome to visit. On Sunday, my wife's parents, siblings, and nieces showed up. We were asleep, and they called like 20 times. After that, they started sending pictures of our entrance saying they're outside. Finally, they woke me up. I went out and told them we were asleep. They wanted to go in, but I assumed they saw my face at a time and just left. Yesterday, my wife was not at home. I was changing the baby's diaper and suddenly my father-in-law starts to video call me like crazy. I finished baby duties and called him back, and he was angry AF and yelled at me why wouldn't I open the freaking door. That was it. I waited until my wife came back and talked to her father and mother. I told them that they have to ask/call before coming. My wife's mom freaked out and told me that if she has to call, she'll never come back. My wife's dad was like, "Dude, I called you like 5 times." So I told him what's the freaking purpose of calling if he does it when he's already outside. It's our home, our rules, our privacy. So they got pretty mad, and that made my wife upset. She agrees with me. Everyone has to call before visiting. We could be busy, or not at home, or not wanting to see anyone at a time. But her parents and siblings seemed so casual about it that I'm starting to doubt if I'm the a-hole. And everyone can show up to everyone's place anytime. Not the a-hole. It's our home, our rules, our privacy. Nail hit squarely on the head. Who has ever told them this is okay? You never show up to someone's house uninvited expecting to go inside, unless you've explicitly been told that it's okay. And when they have a newborn, is the exact wrong time to do this. Not the a-hole. I think it's basic manners to call before you come. It's your house. They either respect your rules or don't come. That's what I said. Ask them if you need to get your attorney involved. Have cease and desist letters sent to them, restraining orders if needed, as well as their arrests. I totally get you. What's stopping me is that this will hurt my wife and my relationship. Maybe that's what they're looking for. Not the a-hole. Since they are so disrespectful and can't figure out how to call first, I would make a new rule. Her parents are not allowed to visit unless personally invited by you or your wife. They're not welcome. No more self-invites regardless of calls. They can come when they're invited. That's what I said first, but my wife didn't agree. Since this is a marriage, I told her, okay, I'm gonna do my part. They don't have to be invited. They just have to call/ask first, but they still won't. Next story. Am I the a-hole for saying no to helping my sister-in-law's foster kid? I'm 26 male and married to my amazing wife Leah, 25 female, and we are expecting our first baby in November. I'm a foster kid. I aged out of the system after a pretty awful experience with the system. I have trauma. Lots of trauma. It's not something I can talk about easily, and Leah and my therapist are the only people I have opened up to, and I try not to burden my wife with this. She understands and never pushes, but she has told me that I can tell her anything when I need to. Her sister Janet, 33, female, and brother-in-law Michael, 37, male, are foster parents and biological parents. Their first foster kid has been with them for about 4 months now, and the kid is struggling. The kid hasn't told them much about their experience, but they assume, probably correct, that their time in foster care has not been very positive. Janet wanted me to take her foster kid under my wing and speak to them about being a foster kid and basically act like a therapist. She said based on my own history in the system, I would be the best person to help. But I don't feel up for that. I don't think I can deal with someone else's trauma related to foster care on top of my own. And I don't feel like I could talk about my experiences either or bring up my trauma to the child. Janet and Michael did not like my response. Leah and Janet fought. Then Janet and I disagreed very strongly on it. She told me I was an a-hole. And as a grown man and soon-to-be father, I should be willing to help a child. And how can I expect to be a good father when I have so much trauma that I cannot put aside for a child in need? I feel bad about a kid and I feel some guilt. But am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This child needs professional therapy, and they have no right to capitalize on your pain for the sake of avoiding that expense. They chose to foster, so this is their responsibility. Put that guilt aside. It's crazy to me because at least in my experiences with the system, the state usually had the kids in therapy anyway, or maybe that was just our situation with my niece. But the kids usually had medical expenses covered, and I thought therapy fell in with that. They need to get this kid professional help for sure. Not the a-hole. They don't understand trauma or the risks that you've been taking with your own mental health. They don't understand that far from finding it helpful, their foster child might be upset by it. If you don't feel able to do it, then setting that boundary is important. I actually think your response shows a lot of self-awareness and was the healthiest one you could make, talking as a former kid of the system. Not the a-hole. You are neither obligated nor frankly qualified to be this kid's therapist or mentor. You would be harming yourself and potentially doing more damage to him than the system already has. This young person needs a proper therapist and or a willing, trained mentor, not a reluctant layman who just happens to be handy and to have suffered some similar trauma. I have never been in the foster system, so this is partly guesswork and partly observation of peers who were in the system. One of the things the system seems to strip away and discard is the ward's sense of privacy. Strangers often know your story, sometimes pieces of it that you don't, and you don't get a choice. Your sister-in-law's request is another example of that disregard, however well intended, for the concept of confidentiality. Now, for the last story, am I the a-hole for not helping my sister with her IVF solely because of her husband? My 34 female sister Meg, 31 female, cheated on my ex-brother-in-law, Josh, with his best friend Liam. They did it for over 4 years until Josh found out and broke up. Liam and Meg have been officially together for 5 years now. My ex-brother-in-law has been my best friend since elementary school, and my sister knew him through me. And despite me saying it would make things uncomfortable, she insisted on hitting on him until he noticed and they started dating. My relationship with Meg took a toll on me because I was annoyed with her for doing this to my best friend, but we never cut contact because of my nephew, her son with Josh and my godson. 1 year ago, I received a large amount of money from inheritance, and because I have a good financial condition, I decided that half would go to help my parents and siblings. My parents received 50% and my 4 siblings, 12.5% each. My parents decided to renovate the house. 2 of my brothers paid off their house debts. Meanwhile, my other sister asked if she could pay for IVF treatment with her girlfriend with that money, and I said yes. At no instance did I control how they wanted to spend their money. Well, Meg was super happy with my help and talked about paying for IVF with Liam because of his infertility, and I hesitated. I'm still best friends with Josh, and I can tell you what they did with him cost years of therapy to get him to start thinking about dating someone. I don't talk to Liam 99% of the time, and I only helped my sister, because after all, she had my nephew. I didn't go to the wedding, and I always made it very clear that it wasn't a relationship I would support, but they are free. So I told her that I didn't feel comfortable giving her the money for this, as it involves Liam, her and their relationship specifically, so I'd rather help in some other way. Renovate house, pay off debts, or refurbish the house, and that I would take double care that the money didn't go to that. She started screaming, telling me to get over something that had nothing to do with me, and that was years ago, and that I was treating her and my other sister differently because of the past. We argued a lot, and I decided to create a fund for my godson that only he could handle at age 18 instead of helping her. Well, this created even more mess because she claims that I helped everyone but her and that I was cruel in denying helping her to have another child when they can't naturally. I really don't feel comfortable doing this. Am I the a-hole? By the way, they didn't receive this inheritance. She never received the money because it went to my nephew's fund before she ever received. Well, I'll put it here. They told me about the plans. I didn't ask, just because they were excited. After I told them at a family dinner about the money, I said, you can renovate your house, pay your debts, and my other sister asked if she could use it for something else, IVF, on another day. So Meg found out, then talked to me before I gave any money. Not the a-hole. It's your inheritance money. You can get to choose what to do with it. I think setting up a fund for your nephew is a brilliant idea. If she wants another kid so bad, she can go cheat on Liam. Haha, that's awesome. OP, not the a-hole. Your money. I like the trust fund idea. Not the a-hole. Okay, so you are treating your two sisters differently. So what? One of them didn't put your best friend through the ringer. The money is yours. You could have chosen to keep the money. You could have given it to Josh, an art museum, or the local animal shelter. Meg doesn't have any say in what you do with the money. If she really wants another child, she could try adoption. Also, by helping her nephew, by proxy OP is still helping her sister. Meg is so obsessed with starting a new little family that she's forgetting about the son she already has. Her pouting about the money going to her son is indicative to the quality of her parenting. If she cannot afford IVF, then she cannot afford another child. Sorry. Absolutely not the a-hole. I hope Josh is doing better. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother's wife that he doesn't own my home? So I inherited my childhood 3-bedroom home after my mother passed away 5 years ago, along with a good chunk of cash. I live in that home right now, and not to brag, but it's a beautiful home. Now, I have a half-brother. We will call him Blake, and we share the same father, also dead. Blake is a deadbeat. Can't keep a job, jumps from relationship to relationship, make excuses, and blame everyone else for his problems. Just really not a good guy. But with my parents gone, he is the only family I have left. So I try to work around it, and he has been living with me for 1.5 years now after getting kicked out of his own apartment for not paying rent. Then, he went and got his newest girlfriend knocked up, and decided that meant they needed to get married right away. They got married at our local courthouse. Now I agreed to have her move in. She's carrying my niece or nephew after all. It's been 3 months since they got married, and she moved in, and she'd been rude, demanding, and just outright the worst the whole time. Originally, I chalked it up to being pregnant, but then one day she comes up to me and tells me that I have to move out. I'm confused and ask her what she means. She goes on about how with the baby coming, it's time to leave because they need a space. I tell her she has no right to kick me out of my own house, and she comments that since she married my brother, the house was part of hers now too, and that it's weird to have your husband's brother living with you and your kid. I realized then that she thought my brother owned at least part of the house, so I explained that she and my brother were in fact living with me, not the other way around, letting her know I fully own it, and my brother has no rights to it, and neither did she. She goes quiet and runs off. When my brother comes home, they get in a huge fight, and she leaves to go to her mother's. My brother is now mad at me for telling her the truth. Honestly, up until this point I thought she knew, but my brother claims he didn't tell her he owns it. She knew the house was inherited, and since we're brothers, she assumed he owned half, and he just never corrected her. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother's wife that he doesn't own my home? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, and here's a tip. Get rid of them. Both of them. Have a nice day. Your brother is about to be a father to some poor unfortunate child and needs to start adulting. Right now, you're just enabling him to continue to be feckless. Not the a-hole. Decent chance she scarpers off, now that she realizes her marriage does not give her a share of the house. Getting pregnant and forcing marriage may have been accidentally on purpose, under the assumption half-brother had assets, which would explain why she's not so happy. Of course, if OP is silly enough to continue underwriting her life, she'll stick around. If it was accidentally on purpose, then if she's truly plucky, there is a decent chance she'll see whether she can change horses. It's a tricky maneuver to jump from one saddle to another while underway, but she may just see it as an enjoyable challenge. Not the a-hole, but you are foolish for letting them mooch off you like this. Prime example of why found family or none can be better than given. If Opie put his effort into his meaningful friendships rather than these two gluttons, he'd be better for it. Not the a-hole, but Opie, have you talked to a lawyer? I've read about people finding loopholes and somehow ending up with property that wasn't originally theirs. Make sure you protect yourself. Typically, that happens when the owner doesn't live there, and the other party has lived there for years and years. The girlfriend discovered the brother owned the house and then demand he leave still. So she clearly has some rational thoughts in her head. Adverse possession has to be hostile. That is, if they have explicit permission to live there, they are never going to just end up with the property. The worst they can do is drag an eviction battle out. Next story. Am I the a-hole for losing it with my former mother-in-law and saying I don't want to help her granddaughter? My ex-husband died 6 months ago. We were divorced for 3 years. Prior to that, after he cheated on me for about 6 years with the woman he married after our divorce. Ex and I share 3 children together, a 17-year-old son, 16-year-old daughter, and a 15-year-old daughter. Ex got his second wife pregnant while we were married, which is how the affair got revealed in the first place. I kicked him out and cut ties, except for semi-civil co-parenting. I have never had anything to do with his daughter who is now 3. After my ex died, my former mother-in-law took her in temporarily. She's in poor health, and my ex was her only child. The mother of the child had no family who was willing to take her, so she wanted to try and keep her out of foster care. My former mother-in-law asked me about 2 months ago to consider raising her granddaughter, seeing as she's the half-sibling of my children. I told her I did not want to do that. She spoke to my children, and they refused to ask me on her behalf. She suggested that my children might want to keep her in their family, and how could I deny them that chance? So I asked my children if they had any thoughts or plans to take her on once any of them were 18, and they all said no. My son said his grandma had mentioned that to him, but he didn't care. My girls share a similar sentiment, though she did not ask them directly. Former mother-in-law reached out again, and I told her my answer was still no. She suggested that her granddaughter is my family, and I cut her off and said that is not true. I told her I am not the child's mother, stepmother, and nor anything that would imply family. She told me she will need to let a caseworker know in the coming weeks that she needs a foster home if I can't take her. She told me to do it for her granddaughter, that she's innocent. How can I not love her? And rambled on a lot about that. So, I lost my cool, snapped at her, and told her I don't want to help her granddaughter, and foster care is the best place for her if she can't raise her. Former mother-in-law told me I was a horrible, evil woman, and that it was no wonder my children don't care about their sister when I had that attitude about her, and she hoped one day it wouldn't come back to bite me in the butt. Am I the a-hole for the way I spoke to her and for what I said about her granddaughter? Edited to add, ex and his wife, aka the mother of the child, both died. It was a car crash. Not the a-hole. Yes, the child is a half-sibling to your children, but that does not create an obligation on your part. Some people are able to take on roles like your mother-in-law is suggesting, and some people can't/won't. There is nothing wrong with that. Your ex-mother-in-law needs to back off. This was her choice. Now she can deal with it. And how great of a life would that child even have? Being raised by the person who was cheated on, and her being a constant reminder of the infidelity. Seems kinder to give her a clean slate with a new family that can love her without baggage. To clarify, the clean slate would be the foster family not seeing the daughter as the product of an affair. Unfortunately, I don't think there are many outcomes where she doesn't go through trauma. I've heard my share of stories from adults who were the love child, and it's really heartbreaking to hear how the immediate and extended family couldn't unsee the betrayal, and the child suffered. I had one woman tell me she felt guilty for being alive. Apparently, she's choosing the path where she loses all of her grandchildren too. Raising a 3-year-old when your youngest is 15? Even if it was a good friend's kid, it's a lot to ask, and depending who, too much to ask. I would definitely cut contact if she's trying to guilt the children because of this. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. It is insane for the ex-mother-in-law to try to rope you into this. He went above and beyond even talking to her kids about this. That child has been dealt a terrible hand, and I hope she isn't failed by the foster system. I mean, it's not insane, it's desperate. I can understand 100% why she's trying to do it, but also why it's never going to happen. Everyone has been dealt a crappy hand here, and it's obviously gotten to an inevitable and pleasant conclusion. She's lashed out, which she obviously shouldn't, but the whole thing is just sad. No a-holes here. Just a terrible situation that pushed people too far. No a-holes here. You are completely within your rights to say no, and I don't blame you. At the same time, I cannot fault a grieving mother for fighting tooth and nail to try to protect her grandchild from being mistreated in the foster care system. This is an awful situation all around. Next story. Am I the a-hole for liquidating my daughter's college fund to keep our dream house? I, 50 female, lost my husband 4 years ago. I also have a 16-year-old daughter. My late husband left me everything and told me to trust his lawyer. My husband had worked for 20 years as a doctor and did some minor investing, so I inherited over 7 figures. A year later, I decided to list our home of 12 years and received an offer too good to refuse. With the inheritance, as well as the influx of cash from selling the house, I decided to move my daughter and I to Malibu because we always dreamed of a home next to the beach. But my husband was exceptionally tight-fisted and called homes their money pits. We found a beautiful home by the sea. I never personally handled anything regarding buying a home before, so I did not anticipate all the extra costs beyond the sticker price. But my daughter was so excited, so I decided to go for it. My late husband's lawyer was furious at my decision, so I decided to stop taking his calls. And I ended up signing with a money manager who said that we'd be passively earning 90% of what surgeons earned per year. But the money manager ended up tanking a lot of our investments. I took the dwindling money out and made my own investments, which made it worse. And long story short, because all of that, I only have around $35,000 available to me now. Not to mention our debts. With the amount available to me, I'm looking at only being able to pay 1 month of a mortgage/upkeep. And then I'm basically out of luck until my business gets clients. However, the place where we do have a significant amount of money is the fund my husband started for our daughter. With the money there, I could prevent our credit cards from being shut down and not have to worry about the mortgage for many more months. So I ended up liquidating my daughter's college fund. I told her about it today, and she was furious and said she cannot believe all her dad's work is gone. She also said she won't be supporting me for my retirement. Am I the a-hole for trying to fix my mistakes and trying to keep our house? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. You decided not to listen to the lawyer. You decided to move on to an extremely expensive place. And you decided to trust someone's shady advice. Now you're taking away your daughter's chances of being able to go to college loan-free? That money's not yours. You should be ashamed of yourself. He has it right. Malibu is a money pit for empty Airbnbs. One grocery store on the highway with outrageous prices. And almost no food except for tourist traps. Opie essentially gambled her 7-figure life savings, ruined her daughter's future, and now asks if she's an a-hole. Literally couldn't make some of the stuff up that I read on the sub. Yes, Opie, you're a selfish a-hole. You're the a-hole. You made an extremely poor financial decision and disregarded those around you who were offering you more sound financial advice. Having a home near the beach doesn't mean you need to move to Malibu, but I digress. You are absolutely the a-hole here. You robbed your daughter of a chance to start her life off comfortably and took money that was never intended for you. Sell this godforsaken money pit of a home, get somewhere you can actually afford, and take a class in personal finance management. Also, grow up? Opie literally goes to the attorney because they weren't telling her what she wanted to hear. I have a few lawyers in my social circle, and this is extremely common. From the sounds of it, emphasis on the extremely. This is what we want to do. That's illegal. You'll almost definitely be caught. It's a waste of your time and money. Well, I want to do it. I advise the exact opposite. Here's a list of reasons this is a terrible idea. God, this is why people hate lawyers. You don't get it. It's a conversation I think I've heard complained about dozens of times at least. Lol. Why would someone hire a lawyer for legal advice and then completely fly in the face of it? Hell if I know. I'm a lawyer. Can confirm. People ask lawyers whether they can or should do something and then become furious when we tell them no. You don't hear from them again until the thing they did anyway blows up in their face, at which point they are still furious. But this time it's because you didn't stop them. Just like on AITA, people are more interested in validation than the truth. And this is one of many reasons why I am no longer in legal practice. Last story. Am I the a-hole for ruining a wedding, although I told the bride I shouldn't sit next to my ex? I was in a relationship from 18 to 24 years old. He was 5 years older. He wanted children and marriage in the next 2 years, but I didn't want that at a time, so I broke up with him. I was sad about the breakup, but I knew that it was the right decision. I wanted to study without a child as I was 1 year away from finishing, travel with friends, and enjoying my 20s. After 1 year of our breakup, I had a one-night stand with a friend who had a crush on me for years, and after realizing I was pregnant, we stayed together. We moved together to another city because of our jobs. After the birth of our daughter, we married. I couldn't be happier with my husband, and we are now together for nearly 5 years and happier than ever. I didn't know if my ex knows that I became a mother, and since I moved away while being pregnant, I missed a lot of birthdays of our mutual friends, and he didn't follow me on social media. Now was the wedding from one of our mutual friends, and I was happy about the invite. But then I got a message from another one of our friends who told me that nobody told my ex that I became a mother and married, and that he didn't seriously date anybody else after the breakup. He's successful in his job and concentrates on that, but his friends are worried that he is lonely. They requested that I come without my child. We actually had this planned before, so my husband and me have enough time to reconnect, and my mother-in-law would be so happy to have our daughter overnight. And also to not mention my husband, which I disagreed. So I asked the bride if she wanted me not to come, and told her the request from our other friends, and she told me that I should definitely come, and that she doesn't see any problem with it. When we arrived at the wedding, we realized that we were seated next to my ex, which I found strange. I went quietly to the bride and told her that would probably be not the best idea, but she brushed it off. My ex barely talked to me but drank a lot. My husband chatted with another person from our table and mentioned our daughter after 2 hours sitting at the table. That's when my ex lost it. He made a big scene and accused me of lying to him about not wanting children. It was so embarrassing, and ultimately my husband and I left while my ex got carried away by other guests. Since then, I got calls from mutual friends calling me the a-hole because I rubbed my happiness on my ex's face, and I'm a little bit confused. The bride isn't happy and accused me of ruining the wedding since I could just not mention my daughter, and that she was sad about the scene it caused. My ex lost it. He made a big scene and accused me of lying to him about not wanting children. You didn't cause a scene, your ex did. He's the a-hole. And you know what? Your friend is the a-hole too for sitting y'all next to each other. Knowing all that history, and she still thought it would be okay? Nope. Seriously, why the heck would she put Opie and her husband next to her ex? They say those that stir the third pot get to lick the spoon. There was no way the bride didn't know what she was doing. Either she was hoping for drama, or hoping to make Opie feel like crap once she saw her ex. Not the a-hole. Oh please, they sat you next to your ex on purpose. There is no way they didn't know he wouldn't behave that way when drinking. It's on him for acting that way, not you. You even asked to be moved. Total setup by her so-called friends thinking they could get you two back together. Pretty obvious whose side they were on when they broke up. The ex probably made himself look like a victim because the woman he wanted wouldn't marry and have kids with him when he was telling her to. And for the past 6 years, they've had to watch this poor sap be miserable that he couldn't control Opie. That even now he feels she owes him an explanation because she had the audacity to have children. And no one tried to get him to move on. Opie's so-called friends probably hoped she would show up alone to not upset the ex, and that they would magically fall back in love. I think the bride was hoping she would see her ex, and realize what a huge mistake she made, drop her husband and baby, then run off into the sunset with the ex. Update. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad, who left, that I don't remember him? Original post. I'm 15 female and my father is 46 male. My dad left the family when I was 7 without any explanation. He just vanished one day, and I've never seen him since. He left because of relationship issues with my mom. She was heartbroken and waited 5 years for him to return, but in the end filed for divorce. Thankfully, she's over him now. To be honest, now, 8 years after he left, I barely have any memory of him. Only resentment for the years of suffering he put my mom and sister, 19 female, through. They tried to contact him, but did never respond. I can't even remember his voice, personality, or even face much. Then last week, he texted my mother and said he wanted to meet, after 8 years of disappearance. My mom agreed. We arranged a meetup at a nearby restaurant. My sister was so nervous but excited, but I realized I felt nearly nothing. He arrived and my mom and sister started crying. He cried too, at the sight of his beloved daughters. He saw that I looked quite emotionless and said, "Don't you miss your dad?" I replied honestly that I didn't remember him. He left so long and it's like I barely knew him. He was so shocked and hurt. Eventually, he cut off our meetup early, claiming he had to work. My mom and sister were so mad. They blamed it on me. My mom said that my sister has been waiting to see her dad for so long, but I had to make a stupid remark and make him leave a second time, asking how I could behave like this towards my dad, telling me that I'm a selfish witch and an a-hole. I'm sorry that I cut the meetup short because I knew my sister missed him so damn much. But to be honest, I don't feel bad for saying the truth. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. If he's going to leave again because his daughter told him the truth, they're better off with him gone. Exactly. If his response was anything but apologetic when you said that to him, then he's still a loser. You're better off spending time with people who want to treat you well. Not the a-hole. Right? He should have apologized profusely instead of calling her selfish. He is the selfish one. Not the a-hole. OP's reaction is completely normal and warranted. And anyone expecting anything else can only be disappointed. Honestly, after all those years, I wouldn't call her unreasonable if she doesn't want to see him as her dad. OP's dad left when she was 7 and met her again at 15, which means she spent more than half of her life without him there. He left before any lasting memories of him can be formed, and only returned when OP's character/personality had been fully solidified. Basically, he wasn't there for any event that OP can remember clearly, or can impact her life/her as a person significantly so far. It's no wonder why she doesn't remember him. I found it less surprising than the fact that her dad still expects a warm welcome after 8 years and all their struggles. Honestly, OP's reaction is the least surprising, suspicious, or concerning thing about this whole encounter. Dad's response and mom/sister's reaction was way more eyebrow-raising. I mean, seriously. First, about the dad. Why did he, after 8 years of giving zero care about his wife and daughters, asking for a meetup? His beloved daughters. It's almost like he had no contact with them for nearly a decade. I feel like he only came back because he needs/wants something from OP's mom, and is trying to manipulate her and their kids into letting him back in so he could get what he wants. It's pretty obvious. If he genuinely cared about bonding again or repairing his relationships, he would have apologized and certainly would not get mad at OP for her reasonable reaction. Second, OP's mom and sister's reactions. If the mom is A, crying over dad leaving again, and B, is shifting blame to OP instead of holding dad, the one truly at fault, accountable. I don't think she's over her ex as OP thought. She waited for 5 years before accepting the truth and moving on with her life. There's clearly very, very deep-seated issues here and they haven't been addressed, much less resolved. Not the a-hole. You're the selfish one? He walked out with no explanation when you were only 7, and shows up 8 years later thinking everything is going to be all okay and yet you are selfish for not remembering him? I'm in shock. I'm even more shocked that your mom and sister are with him on a playing happy family in a sense, rather than ripping him a new one for what he did. Someone made a very good point that the dad was gone from OP's life longer than he has been there. It makes total sense that he wouldn't be remembered. Yeah, poor little old dad. How could his daughter not remember and miss him after he abandoned his family when she was 7? Not the a-hole. And now for the update. Hi, it's me again, but now I'm 1 year older. And a bit wiser, I hope. It's been a few months since I initially posted, so here's an update on how my life's going. First, I no longer feel bad about making my dad leave the meetup, since he somehow reconciled with both my mom and sister. Here's how it happened. In mid-April, he came to our house to see my sister on her birthday. He bought a ton of gifts, and said a lot of sappy words which of course won my mom and sister over. He tried to talk to me, calling me his darling baby and precious little girl. However, when he realized that I truly did not see him as a father, he left. In June, he visited again. I confronted him and asked why he suddenly wanted to be so involved in the family after leaving for 8 years. He said that he never forgot about us and always felt so guilty about leaving, that he needed to see us again because we were the most important people in his life. I demanded to know why he left then. His exact answer was, "Baby, when I was in a relationship with your mom, things got difficult. Things like that happen in relationships and daddy needed a break. It doesn't mean daddy doesn't love you." I thought it was utter BS. I said, if you needed a break, you could have talked things out with mom. You could have even filed for divorce. But instead, you walked out and left without a trace, like a freaking coward. He tried to convince me that I wouldn't understand these kinds of things, but I wouldn't hear him out. He dodged my questions and eventually got so frustrated that he left again. In July, which is my birthday month, he visited on my birthday. In a very passive-aggressive manner, he said he wanted to take my sister and mom out to a restaurant to catch up with Daddy. My sister asked, "You are not taking her, me, too?" He responded, "Opie's very temperamental with Daddy. Can you tell her that Daddy loves her? She won't understand." I find it very weird and slightly disturbing that he is still talking to us like we're little kids, despite me being 16 and my sister being 20. My sister and mom were hesitant about leaving without me, but eventually they went. They came home to celebrate my birthday with me, but I still thought it was hurtful they went in the first place. Our family hasn't heard from Dad all August, despite my sister trying to reach out to him. Of course, they are putting the blame on me for giving him the cold shoulder. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. By the way, I'm so thankful to all the commenters. If it weren't for them, I'd probably be still feeling guilty and sad. Have a great day. They went out with him. Without you? On your birthday? That's cold. On her 16th birthday on top of that. Mom doesn't sound much better than Dad. And the older sister is 20 yet pulling this nonsense. There's something seriously wrong with your father. I'm so sorry. I hope you have support and counseling. I think there's something seriously wrong with her mother. That the woman can take her other child and went to dinner with an ex-husband who walked out on her years ago on her daughter's birthday. She left birthday daughter behind by choice. Father didn't make her do it. That blows my mind. This woman is literally choosing to side with a man who ruined her family, rather than the daughter who is, rightly so, struggling to form a bond with a man she barely knows. This speaks volumes, that her mother never got over her husband leaving her, that her mother is more desperate to stay on this man's good side than protect her own child, and that her mother probably will not stand up for her in any way if her father were to return to their family. Her mother is a piece of work, and everyone is just blaming the father. Your dad is manipulative and abusive. He is gaslighting the whole family, and it is sad your mom and sister are falling for it. He will disappear and try to blame you. He is never at fault. Correct. He is now angling for something. Either he wants a signature from mom, or mom has a relative about to kick the bucket. He has an ulterior motive. Something has happened to bring him back into your life. Next story. Am I the a-hole for explaining to my half-brother why mine and my brother's dad isn't his dad? My parents divorced when my mom cheated. My brother was 9 at a time and I was 8. Mom cheated and got pregnant. After Dad left her while she was pregnant, he did a DNA test when my half-brother was born and confirmed he was not a father. My half-brother's bio-dad was married as well, and his wife would only forgive him if he had nothing to do with my half-brother. They ended up moving and I guess staying out of the view of the courts, so I never paid any child support or had contact with my half-brother. My dad is not in his life. I know that's controversial for a lot of people, even people we know, but my brother and I never felt like he was doing the wrong thing. We knew our half-brother wasn't Dad's, and we knew people with step-families where the two sides didn't mix. But Mom always felt bad that he had ruined our half-brother's life. She had no male family members, and my brother always has kind of hated our half-brother for being born, not going to lie. So he has all girls/women but no male figures. It makes me feel bad for him, but I still don't think it's my dad's job. But Mom does. She has told my half-brother that my dad is technically his dad, because he is mine and my brother's dad. So over the years he has sought out my dad, and there are times where he's kind of figured they're not actually dad and son, but he has asked my dad if he would be his dad, since he doesn't have one. Yeah, it's sad. My dad has told my mom to fix it, but she just wants to pressure him to do more. He's asked me several times if I could help him get my dad to love him. It's always awkward because I won't ever do that. But I also don't want to hurt him since he's still so young. Recently, he has bought more into the idea that Dad is his dad too and is a deadbeat to him. Mom told me she stands by that thinking 100% and my dad is the a-hole in all of this. It came up again with him and Mom was agreeing with him. I called her out and told her to tell the truth and fix it, but she refused. So I told him it was like his best friend's family, where his best friend has Alex as a dad but his mom is married to Mark and has kids with him. I said it was the same for us. He was so hurt and asked Mom why she didn't give him a better dad. And Mom kicked me out. I'm 18 and don't live with her, and told me I was a nasty witch who broke my brother's heart, instead of going after a grown man Who could have been loving enough to take on his own kid's sibling who had done nothing wrong and is the most innocent person in all of this? She also said she knows I don't consider him a real brother, and that it's horrible he doesn't even have siblings who love him unconditionally. I know my half-brother is still pretty devastated by it all, which is why I wonder if I'm the a-hole here. Am I? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Neither is your dad, your brother, or half-brother. Everyone else is, especially your mom. She is making a no-win situation and then trying to manipulate your dad into being her youngest son's dad. She is hurting everyone more in the process. It is not your half-brother's fault he doesn't have a father figure, but that doesn't mean your dad has to take on a responsibility that is not his. Your mom needs to step up and own up to it. Your brother is now 10, so old enough to understand. I'm sorry you were caught in the middle. Every time I see this, I'm shocked. I still don't get it. How do you cheat on your spouse, have a kid with the affair partner, and then expect the person you wronged to take on a product of your affair? How do you begin to think this is acceptable, much less expected? The same way you find it acceptable to cheat on your partner, sometimes people are just a-holes. Not the a-hole, your mother is the a-hole. This is her way of refusing to take responsibility for cheating on your father and ultimately betraying your family. She wants to make your father the villain, because if he is, I suppose somehow that makes her less guilty, at least in her own eyes. You gave your half-brother the truth. Something he has been sorely lacking. In truth, you did nothing wrong. You just did what your mother was either too scared or too selfish to do. Your half-brother is in a real lousy situation and I feel for him. I also think it's wrong for your brother to blame him for being born, when your mother and the a-hole she cheated with are to blame. I hope he finds people who will give him the love and affection he is wanting so badly someday. Putting responsibility on someone else seems to be her MO. She knows Opie's half-brother is seeking approval from someone he'll never get it from, by no fault of his own and encouraging a false belief, because it gets her off the hook. She blames Opie for taking the band-aid off and telling the truth. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sisters I won't choose them over our dad? My parents had 4 children together. My sister Amy, my brother Luke, my sister Sarah, and then me. Until 2019, we had no idea there was this deep, dark family secret lurking underneath the surface, until a series of events happened. We discovered our father was not our biological father, and this was something he didn't know either. We ended up doing paternity tests with the hope that it wasn't true, but it was. Amy and Luke share a sperm donor while Sarah and I share one. Our mother claimed she knew Dad was infertile, or at least was not able to get her pregnant, after years of struggling to conceive and having tests done on herself. So she decided to secretly get babies by sleeping with men, one of them being our father's own brother, who is the donor for me and Sarah. Dad wanted a divorce right away. He was furious. He was heartbroken. He was all sorts of things. And my sisters were telling him how he should look at it as sperm donation, and how we just had another dad out there who could be good for us, etc. Dad said it made it worse. My sisters were not happy. They tried everything to talk Dad out of the divorce, even saying his divorcing mom was saying he wasn't glad he got us out of the bad situation. Luke and I are the only 2 who wanted nothing to do with Mom or with the sperm donors. Our sisters didn't like that, and turned on Dad, saying he should be encouraging us and embracing this as just another part of our family. He confided in me that he feels like less of a dad, because he's not just our dad but one of them, because someone else made us. Someone else will always come into it. I told him as far as I was concerned, he's the only dad I have, and as a daddy's girl, I could never have a relationship with someone else like ours. My dad has not spoken to that brother since, which made things even worse with Sarah, who asked him to allow her to have both her dads being good with each other. Amy and Sarah's relationship with Luke and I is not good, but now we've had a big fight. Amy and Sarah said Dad is selfish and an a-hole for what he's done, and claimed he never really loved us if he can't be happy for us expanding his family. We disagreed. They said we should not be talking to someone who actively doesn't want the best for us and our newfound families. I told them I totally understood Dad, and to me, he was my only dad. Luke agreed. They said we couldn't expect them to be around him after he showed how little he truly loves them. I told them I would not choose them over Dad, so forget it. They were hurt and I get it. They told us we were breaking the family apart and we were refusing to see the positive. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. However she wants to frame it, your mom cheated on your dad and got pregnant 4 times. And not everyone gets pregnant the first time they try for a baby. So Christ knows how many people she's had unprotected activities with whilst she was with your dad. Apart from this being cheating, then there's the risk of STIs which she presented to your father without his knowledge. And how does she know he had a low sperm count if he's never been tested? She wanted to cheat, and she's using this as a rather feeble excuse. Not stay whole, and standing with your dad is totally the right thing to do. My heart breaks for how he must feel, that all of you aren't with him in this. As for him feeling like less of a dad, he is so much more. Not the a-hole. Sperm donation is done with the full consent and knowledge of all parties. What your mother did is more commonly known as cheating. She is the a-hole in all of this, and the main person responsible for breaking 2 families apart. Yours and your father's, since I highly doubt that he will be speaking with his brother anytime soon. And his brother was married with a family when this happened. Just so much.
Update. I, 39 male, found some old stuff about my wife, 37 female, and I don't know what to do. Original post. A bit of background. My wife and I, not legally married, but I don't like the term partner or girlfriend, are both in our late 30s. We've been together for 10 years, have a 2-year-old, and my wife is currently pregnant with another boy. For the most part, our relationship has been great. Like most couples, we have our ups and downs, but we're mostly good friends and great partners in life. However, there has always been a thing in our relationship that has been bothering me more in the last couple of months: our sex life. In the early years, everything was fine. We weren't an overly sexual couple, but we had sex a few times a week, and I was content with that. About 3 years into our relationship, we had been living together for a while and started trying for a baby. Unfortunately, we weren't having much success, so we went to the doctor. Over the next few years, our sex life changed. It became mechanical. Scheduled times, specific positions, endless tests, and month after month of disappointment. To be honest, it stopped being fun. We then went through 2 cycles of IVF, both of which were unsuccessful. At this point, we were doing it maybe once or twice a month. Thankfully, we eventually got pregnant naturally, and we were over the moon. However, there was a lot of stress since we had lost a baby girl before. During that time, I didn't push for it, and I believe we only had it a couple of times. When our son was born, well, most of you know how newborns are. Between work, stress, sleepless nights, and lack of opportunity, we didn't have sex at all during that first year. After that, we started again, but I always felt like it was more of a duty for my wife. I had to spend 1 or 2 weeks slowly seducing her until she eventually got in the mood. Thankfully, we got pregnant again a few months ago, and since then, our sex life has stopped completely. I've tried initiating a couple of times, but my wife always says she's not in the mood, too tired, or too pregnant. I don't want to be an a-hole, so I back off and stopped trying. Everything was fine. I had accepted that it was off the table for the next few months, but then something happened last month that made me rethink everything. Our son still wakes up a lot during the night, and most nights, my wife sleeps with him. Almost like clockwork, at 5 a.m., he wakes up for good and wants to play or watch cartoons. I usually take care of him while my wife sleeps for a couple more hours. Before Christmas, I gave my wife a new phone and gave her old one to our son to watch cartoons. I know he shouldn't, but it helps. One morning, I grabbed the phone, opened Google, and saw the recently visited sites on the homepage. One of them was an adult site. I knew it wasn't me or my son, so I realized it had to be my wife. Her Google account was still linked to the old phone, meaning it had synced from her new one. At first, I just laughed, deleted the site from the recent history, and moved on. I didn't think much of it. Maybe a friend told her about a specific video, or maybe she got horny and didn't want to bother me. A couple of days later, the same thing happened. This time, curiosity got the best of me, and I checked her browser history. I found out that she was watching 2 or 3 times a week after I went to bed early. I wasn't mad, just a bit disappointed. Still, I tried to be understanding. Maybe she doesn't feel sexy, doesn't have the energy for it, and relieves herself this way. I didn't say anything, but the thought stayed in my mind. I started wondering if I had gained too much weight and if she was no longer attracted to me. Then, I did something I'm ashamed of. Since her account was still linked to that phone, so were her social media accounts. I went down a rabbit hole. My worst fear was that she was having an affair, but I didn't find any recent chats or messages from any new guys. Out of curiosity, I searched my name. As expected, a lot of results appeared, but one message stood out. OP is kind of ugly, but I like him. I opened the chat, and it was from a conversation with a friend from 10 years ago when we first met and were still just friends. I read a few more messages, and it was like a punch to the gut. She was telling her friend that I was ugly, that I didn't have a great body like Ben, but that I was a nice guy. I searched for who Ben was and discovered he was a guy she had been with for a few months before me. Before him, she was with her official ex. When we started dating, she told me she had been single for 2 years. Now, I've discovered that in the 12 months before me, she was with at least 2 guys. I also checked the chats with Ben and her ex and found that she was still talking to them during the first 2 to 3 years of our relationship. To be fair, the conversations weren't anything crazy, but maybe it's just my head messing with me. There were hints of flirting here and there. Another thing that bothers me is how different she seemed in those chats. She was much more sexual than she has ever been with me. She talked about all the marathons she had, the positions she tried, and other stuff. Things she told me were completely off limits. Maybe it's just girl talk. I don't know. With all of this, my self-esteem has plummeted. I feel ugly, unattractive, betrayed, and to be honest, used. These past few weeks, I've been trying to be alone as much as possible. I've been staying late at work, waking up in the middle of the night, and moving to the sofa, just avoiding everything. I really don't know what I'm going to do. The only silver lining in all of this is that I've suddenly felt the urge to get back in shape. I've been hitting the gym more often. Thanks for taking the time to read this. What do I do now? Now for the top advice before reading the update. It's hurtful to know how your significant other viewed you before they got to know you. So many problems with this relationship. 10 years, 2 kids, wife, but unmarried. How do people get this deep into life without making a firm commitment to each other? There is commitment. In our country, after living together for 2 years, you have the same rights as married couples. We aren't religious at all, so we never felt the urge to do it. There were always better things to spend the money on. Do you know how expensive IVF treatments are? I really don't understand why there is seemingly zero empathy for you here. I am so sorry. You met her, got to know her, and built a life together, all while believing the information she shared with you was truthful. Now you're discovering that parts of her past were withheld, and her initial impression of you wasn't what you thought. Of course that hurts. If I were you, I'd go through the entire scenario in my head, how you found out, how you got access to the phone, what exactly you uncovered. The evidence is there. She didn't betray you in the present. There was no actual break in trust, but there is a break in confidence, and that's something you need to acknowledge. I'd tell her that directly, or if you're not ready, see a therapist for yourself without telling her. Either way, you need to process this instead of just hitting the gym and avoiding the real issue. Exactly. I don't think I've ever seen so many negative, unsympathetic, and ignorant comments here. OP built the last 10 years with her, only to now discover that he was the safe choice, the person she settled for. That would make anyone feel terrible. No one deserves to feel like a second pick. If he still wants to be with her, I don't blame him. But people telling him to just deal with it for the sake of the kids are being just as cruel. Sure, the past is in the past, and people do change, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to see the truth now. Now for the update. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and messaged me. While I haven't been able to reply to most of you, I have read everything. I just wasn't in a great place mentally. The day I made my original post, and the day after, I was feeling especially down. My partner noticed and kept asking what was wrong. That night, after our son went to sleep, she asked again, and I could no longer hold it in. I told her what I had done and what I had found. It wasn't pretty. She immediately started crying and yelling at me for going through her phone, which I understand. However, she never once addressed what I had actually found, only how mad and disappointed she was in me for invading her privacy. Since she's pregnant and was getting stressed, I didn't push the issue further. She went to bed, and I stayed on the couch. The next 24 hours, she didn't speak to me at all. The following night, I decided to push the issue again and told her we needed to talk. She agreed. What she told me, I assume she thought it would be comforting, was far from it. Long story short, she admitted that after breaking up with her long-term ex-boyfriend, which I already knew about, she went through a phase of exploration. She had multiple short-term relationships and casual encounters, but chose not to tell me because she knew how society views that kind of behavior. She then told me that after breaking up with the last guy, the one I saw in the messages, she decided she was done playing around and wanted to settle down. I asked her outright, "Was I just the guy you settled for?" She responded, "No, you were much better than those guys. You had your life on track, you had goals, and you were financially secure." I pushed further and asked, "If I wasn't stable, would you have ever been interested in me?" She hesitated and then admitted, "Probably not." She started crying again and confessed that although she loves me, she has never been physically attracted to me in the same way she was to other men. After all the struggles we had trying to conceive, sex had become more of a task than something pleasurable. I then asked why she had continued talking to those guys for years into our relationship. She said it was never romantic, just something to boost her confidence. She insisted she never cheated on me, but it was nice to feel desired. At that point, I felt like I was dying inside, but I kept a straight face. She asked me to come to bed with her, but I told her I needed time to process everything, and I stayed on the couch again. I didn't sleep at all that night, and at some point, I accepted that the person I fell in love with was just an illusion. The next morning, I went to work but also scheduled a meeting with my family lawyer. I was upfront with him, explaining that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, but I needed to understand my financial options and responsibilities. He explained that, by default, our country's laws assign 50-50 co-parenting, unless there's violence or a mutual agreement otherwise. If both parents are working, there are no financial obligations toward each other. For our unborn child, the court would likely mandate that the baby stays with the mother for the first 6 months, but I would have visiting rights, and after that, 50-50 co-parenting would be expected. Regarding finances, since we've mostly kept separate bank accounts and assets, we wouldn't have to split them. However, we would need to split the house and cars unless one of us buys the other out. This is where I would take a hit, as I had paid for most of it, but legally, everything would be divided 50-50. That night, I worked late, slept on the couch again, and before leaving for work the next morning, I told my partner that I needed some space and would be staying at a hotel for a few days. During this time, she kept calling and texting, but I only responded to say we would talk when I was ready. To be honest, I just needed time alone, to drink, to sleep, and to process everything. When I came back home a few days later, we had another serious conversation. I told her that I knew what I did was wrong. Going through her phone wasn't okay. I also reassured her that I had no issue with her having had a fun phase before we met. But I admitted that I was deeply hurt by knowing I was just a stable, responsible choice, not someone she was genuinely attracted to. I also told her that I hadn't decided what I was going to do yet, but for now, I didn't see her as my loving partner anymore. However, if she was open to it, I was willing to try counseling and see where things went. So, that's where we are now. We've had 2 therapy sessions so far, but honestly, they haven't helped much. We'll continue, but I don't know if it will make a difference. My partner has been trying to be more affectionate and has initiated sex a few times, but I've declined, telling her I'm not ready. Meanwhile, I've been spending more time away from home, going to the gym, spending quality time with my son, and going out to dinner with friends and colleagues. I still love my partner, but I can't look at her the same way anymore. Our newborn is due in early April, and I know that will be the ultimate test for our relationship. But to be completely honest, at this moment, I'm slowly accepting that we might be done. Thanks again to everyone for your messages and kind words. I'm sorry, man. This one truly sucks. Your relationship has been a lie. For the rest of your life, you'll live knowing that the person you're sleeping with is doing it out of duty because she feels obligated, not because she desires you. Man, you're 39. You've still got half your life left. Bite the bullet and cut your losses. Don't raise children in a miserable home because that misery will trickle down to them. You both deserve happy relationships. Your partner has a track record of lying and omitting things, and you can't rebuild on that because the foundation was never genuine. The grass isn't always greener, but in rare cases like yours, it certainly will be. Literally this. I'm honestly so irritated reading about people who get with others because they see them as the safe option. It's vile. They're literally stealing away a potential lifetime of happiness from someone because they are selfish. OP, you deserve so much more than what your wife has given you. She's a selfish liar. Don't basically end your life of joy just to stay with her and be miserable. Good luck. It always amazes me when a significant other is perfectly fine lying, cheating, and emotionally abusing their significant other by carrying on affairs, and make no mistake, her continuing to talk to her exes were emotional affairs, plural. And then they have the audacity to say going through their phone is a line that shouldn't be crossed. Really? She's more upset about how you found out the truth than the fact she is actually using you for financial security. With 2 young children, soon, I agree counseling should be legitimately attempted prior to splitting up, but it can only maybe work if she faces and shows true remorse for what she's done. She trapped you in a near sexless marriage because she's a selfish person. It is possible to fall in true love with someone you're not physically attracted to. I've done it, but she didn't even attempt to. She simply used you like an emotional and financial ATM. She needs to admit to this and put in the work to change, and even then, I fear that won't be enough. In the meantime, keep hitting the gym, socializing with friends, spending that quality time with your son, and finding your joy separate from her. Thank you. At this point, I'm still sad and hurt. But I'm not depressed, which is great. I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, either with or without her. I just want to minimize whatever trauma this brings to my kid. Last story. I'm 37 female seriously considering ending my engagement and relationship to my fiancé 36 male. I went out with my fiancé on Valentine's Day. My gift was going to an event called Martini Wars. I think it was something he found last minute on Eventbrite. It was a battle between bartenders. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of drinking. Things were going fine until the ride home. In the Uber, his tongue was hanging out of his mouth, his eyes were rolling back, and his head was bobbing back and forth. I was afraid he was going to vomit in the car, so I kept the windows down and tried to comfort him. We made it home fine, but then he became very obstinate. He refused to listen to me. He was still borderline sick, so I kept telling him to move to the toilet, but he wouldn't budge from the spot where he was in the bathroom. Then he vomited all over the floor. I became upset at how unnecessarily defiant he was being. At some point, he became angry and showed me a side of him I had never seen in the 5 years we've been together. He began screaming at me and didn't back down. I was in an abusive relationship before, and it triggered the worst memory of that experience. I begged and pleaded with him to stop yelling, but he didn't. Eventually, he left the room and I took the opportunity to book a hotel for the night. I woke up in the hotel to a text from him saying that he didn't remember anything but was very sorry. I stayed away from him all weekend. Since he's returned home, he has done nothing to make amends for his actions. I told him the engagement was off, and he accepted it without protest. He avoids me around the house and doesn't try to connect with me. The worst part is that Wednesday nights are supposed to be our date nights. Yesterday, he told me he was going out with his friend and asked if I wanted to join. I feel like he doesn't even care how much he hurt me and doesn't want to fight for the relationship. I know I'm presenting only my side, but I'm wondering if this relationship is salvageable. If you were in his shoes, what steps would you take to show that you were serious about the fact that you hurt your fiancé? So your gift was an event he wanted to go to. Then he got wasted, screamed at you for trying to help him and isn't doing anything to apologize or fix this? Sounds like he doesn't think he really did anything wrong and believes you overreacted, which you didn't. I don't think he's taking you ending the engagement seriously. He probably assumes there's no way you'd actually leave him. You need to make it permanent. He showed complete disregard for you and won't apologize, which tells you exactly what kind of life you'll have with him, a verbally abusive man who never takes responsibility. Is that what you want? Because if you accept his behavior, it will only get worse. I haven't even addressed the crappy Valentine's gift. No flowers, no card, just copious amounts of drinking. But yeah, this weekend has been eye-opening. I think I'm just in shock because my whole life got uprooted in one night like that. If I were him, my first step would be a sincere apology. The next would be trying to find out exactly what I had done or said and asking how I could make amends. He has done none of the above, so it's pretty clear what he thinks of you, and it obviously isn't very much. I would begin the process of separating your lives and moving on. It's hard, I know, but you shouldn't have to live in fear of his next breakdown. You have the right to live and enjoy your life without fear. My husband behaved like this once. He was under a lot of stress, and we'd had far too much to drink that night. I had to call the police because he was so belligerent that I was frightened. The next day, my husband moved out for 2 weeks. He waited until I felt safe enough to invite him back. He got himself into a counseling program and hasn't had a drink since that night. He worked through a lot of underlying emotional issues that fueled the incident and has abstained from alcohol ever since. Anything less than that, I would have left him.